As Larry Kudlow pointed out and we discussed last hour, a lot of the economies around the world were quite weak going into coronavirus. Japan was down 6%. Germany was struggling. So how much worse will this make the picture look? Are we talking about a global recession, which understandably is not well defined?
Absolutely. I think if we think in terms of economic activity, even just putting the markets and the vol aside for the moment, while we had manufacturing in contraction mode for much of 2019 for some of the world's major exporters, namely Japan, Germany, even looking to Italy, services and consumption have really carried the bulk of economic activity, employment gains, wage gains. So if you think about someone hobbling on a crutch, it's services and consumption that have been our crutch. And now all of a sudden you knock the crutch away, you've got a major issue in terms of economic output across the world.
So if that's the case, talk to us about just what the first quarter GDP numbers might look like worldwide. And importantly, the U.S. is not that exposed. We are about 13% of our GDP is exports. So is about a 1% GDP number for the U.S. sound still about right to you for the first quarter? And does it look like now that weakness might be dragging out further into the second quarter?
Yeah, I think you're still seeing robust forecasts on behalf of, the IMF have still put out robust global growth forecasts, just forecasting a contraction for China, namely. I would be slightly more conservative, mainly looking at the services activity in the U.S. Obviously, we saw softer services PMI activity Q1 of this year coming down. So I would certainly be concerned for that outlook. Also, we forget the extent to which 43% of revenue from the S&P 500 is earned abroad, 8% of that, the largest category in Asia, another 8% of that in Europe. So thinking about just the double impact to some of the largest employers in the United States, services and manufacturing, and also retail communities.
When you think about a lot of the large S&P 500 companies, they get a lot of their revenues, sometimes 50%, sometimes a little less, something around there, outside of the United States, either in Asia or Europe. What is the hit to their revenue likely to be, and how does that play through the system into their stock prices?
It's severe both in terms of the supply chain as well as the sales. So again, if you look at some of the Dow 50 companies have had, between 14 to 17 consecutive quarters of double-digit growth in China. You can say goodbye to that, I think, for the first half of the year. So that's just in terms of the sales outlook. U.S. companies sell $220 billion worth of goods to mainland Chinese consumers every year. We also forget in this polarization between the U.S. and China, we forget about the Eurozone as well. As you mentioned, so we have 8% of revenue from the S&P 500 coming from the Eurozone. And with this spread from Italy to Austria to Switzerland, a lot of the finance ministers talking about a potential epidemic outbreak within their respective Eurozone economies, the knock to the European component on sales and supply chain can be severe.
Alexis, let me ask you, because obviously someone in a position like yours does a ton of international travel. Where would you go and not go right now? What are your thoughts about getting on a plane?
I just returned from Canada. I think Canada was a safe bet. But I think Europe is starting to look dicey. So we've started to see some of the major banks put travel bans on Italy. Obviously, investment bankers need to be able to go and look at the deals that they're transacting on. So you're shutting down deal activity in northern Italy, which is 1/3 of the GDP of the country. So I think that's very concerning. So the European outlook is what's very grave. And obviously, we continue to monitor the situation closely with regard to Asia. But I think those travel bans are staying in place.
So Asia's a no-go as far as you're concerned, or?
That's what we're seeing with a lot of the airlines as well.
Yeah.
I think, just risk off at the moment.